this is Chairman.
Yes.
Yeah, just speak from here, right? I was born in Hong Kong and I came here in the 70s. And that's during the colonial time. Back then, you know, there was a saying that Hong Kong had freedom but no democracy. Singapore has democracy but no freedom. Back then, I was in Hong Kong, I was educated in Hong Kong, raised there. And were the people more happy that back then? I don't know, I came here pretty young. And so was the system okay back then? Because back then there was not many people went on protests or they're vocal about the colonial way of governing us. We seem to subject ourselves to colonialism. And was so quiet and polite and so scared of the white people. Things changed, of course, now. And in the private sector, I've been in private sector in the executive level for a long time. Back then there's a saying, you know, in the private sector there's a saying that if they could lead the company to the right direction, prosperity and good things, and rather than having so many says and so many voices of people have no know-how.
So
That's one way. My question is, you're saying that would that be more from the bottom up liberalism, or from a more focal, more focused group? Maybe. I mean, from my experience, if you get good leaders, maybe a more focused group is good to get things done more effectively. Just from, I'm a layman, I'm not a politician, I'm not, okay?
I think your question is entirely legitimate, and it's the question we need to ask ourselves. Especially for proponents of democracy and democratic values, we need to answer these questions. Now, it is actually a very traditional Chinese sort of mindset. It goes back way into our culture, is that if there's a strongman leadership doing the right thing, then the country will become a better place and people will be happy. Why bother with all the other democratic issues? Now, if you look back in history, take the Qing dynasty, for example. The first three emperors, or one of the first three emperors of the Qing dynasty, Hangxi, Yongzheng, and Qianlong. Those three emperors are considered three of the best emperors ever in Chinese history. And within the span of 120 years, they turned China into one of the most powerful nations in the world. Within that span of 120 years, the three of them. Now, within 50 years, after the death of Qianlong, within 50 years, the whole of China is already in crisis. It is embedded in civil war. It is subject to foreign invasion. The country is a mess. The economy is a mess, and was a mess, and people were far more than just not happy there. The country was in crisis. Now, my point being is what we're trying to do for the new China, or for modern China in the 21st century, is to build a system that is sustainable, that would last. Now, I take your point that whoever is elected, say, in Hong Kong, or if there are to be elections in China, might not be the best leader, might not be the best the person to lead the country. But with a system that is sustainable, that could sustain crisis, or could go through challenges with regime change without bloodshed, will give the country a better foundation for sustainable development. Because every time, if you look back in history, every time there is a change of power in China, there will always be a huge revolution or bloodshed. We don't want to see that. This is not a civilized country, not something we want to do. So the question is, do you want a sustainable system? And if you do, what is the way of doing it? We believe that democracy with perhaps evolved values should provide the answer. We haven't got there yet, but I think that's the better direction than going back what we used to have, strongman leadership, because that guy will not live forever, and what happens after him, we don't know.
And we all have heard from Winston Churchill that democracy was a very bad thing. But until we have found something that is better and can work, we have to just put up with it for the time being. I think that is what that's the situation what we are in now. Of course, if you talk about efficiency, if you have a benign dictator, that would be best. But how can you make sure that there is this benign dictator? How to pick him or her? And how can you make sure that power does not corrupt this benign dictator? These are all questions pointing to the answer that we can only believe a system but not believe a man, or for that purpose, a woman. Of course, democracy to me is very simple. It is a system by which the rights and freedoms of individuals are being respected. Of course, everyone, everywhere, when you practice democracy, everywhere has its own problem. I'm sure the Canadian form of democracy, democratic government, has its problems. Likewise, America, the country we just visited, also has its problems. In fact, those problems are not easy to solve. But in Hong Kong, we have argued the case that Hong Kong can be the laboratory of the future democratic system of China. We can consider that we start from a clean slate. We may draw from experiences overseas, from Canada, from America, from UK, from wherever, you name it. But we hope we can devise and design a system that is best suited to solving the problems of Hong Kong, while of course at the very core of this new system, we would respect the rights and the freedoms of individuals. This is where we are heading, yeah, I suppose that is a long enough answer.
We have a number of